Welcome to the Knowing Revolution. I'm Allison Fornes, your host and guide, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad I'm here. I have a debilitating condition called perfectionism, and so it's been taking me a while to get this show out to the world. But I am here. This is the first show. It's spring where I am right now recording. It's also the first full moon. So this is a great time to begin something new. This show, The Knowing Revolution, is really all about composting old, limited ways of knowing and growing the new, expanded, empowered, dynamic ways of relating to the world, of knowing the world. Our current system basically teaches us to objectify the world around us. We've removed the magic, we've removed the mystery, and instead we've replaced it with labeling. You know, we have an educational system that in order for you to get to know the birds and the trees, we sit you inside of a classroom with a book and we teach you how to identify, we categorize, we label, we differentiate, and that's considered knowledge. And every educator that I know is working very hard to bring life, to bring magic, to bring joy and enjoyment back into the classroom or into their learning community. So that's what we're here for. We're here to bring into the world a new way of knowing, which is really a return, I would say, a return of actually ancient ways of knowing. So I know that teachers are thirsting for ways to bring their world to life. I also know that it's really true for all of us who are curious about the world, whether we are trying to create change, whether we're trying to build something new, whether we are trying to solve complex problems. We just can't solve complex problems by trying to break the problem into smaller and smaller parts. What we really need to do is learn how to bring those parts together and understand how the whole parts create a complex system. And the key to that kind of knowing has to do not with the comparing and contrasting the two individual parts, but looking at the relationships. What is the flow of information, the flow of energy, the flow of life, the flow of magic between these two things? So today I thought for the first show we would take on, really take the paradigm, the current system head on by looking at something called intuition. Intuition is not usually considered to be something we value in a classroom. We might refer to it in the context of literature. Maybe we're reading about a character who is using intuition. We might refer to it in the context of movement or perhaps dance or art. In those kinds of ways, we have a context for understanding the ineffable. But we certainly we rarely talk about intuition in the context of our science classes. I don't think we talk about it in the context of of history. Of course, it's all very much alive in all those places. We don't talk about it in the context of problem solving, at least not with any, we don't take it seriously. So the definition here of intuition, the simple definition, that one I was reading, something that is known or understood without proof or evidence. You know, I would argue that though I want to trust the text that I'm reading, there is not an immediate clear sense of the proof or evidence unless I go and confirm it. So there's an action that needs to be taken on the part of a learner if they really want proof or evidence, and the action is to look for some confirmation outside of the words that they're reading. Or if they're thinking about something, they have a thought that arises in their mind, they still need to look for outside proof or evidence. So in that regard, intuition, direct knowing without proof or evidence, is the same thing as a thought. It arises without proof or evidence. All of the proof or evidence needs to be verified through an additional process. So that means that in the case of our intuition, if we have a direct perception, direct cognition of something, the way I teach intuition, and in fact the way anyone who really is feels confident in their intuitive skills, their confidence stems from the fact that they've actually looked for confirmation. They've looked for proof or evidence of what they're perceiving. In exactly the same way, where if I have a thought or I read something in a text, I read it the first time, but then I'm going to look for some kind of proof or evidence, perhaps in a supporting document, that confirms what I've been thinking about. So the process, that kind of process in terms of the evidential piece, that doesn't have to change just because the information came to you in a more intuitive way. You can continue to use that confirmation process. But what is significant about intuition, and the reason why we're talking about it this way, the reason why we're trying to open up the reputation of intuition, has to do with the model, the current model that we have of knowledge, and how knowledge is, how it exists and how it is attained. Our current model of learning, of knowing, is that information rests inside of some place, some kind of vessel. So in order for me to get information about something, there needs to be a clear delivery system. There's something material, information, and that material is delivered through some kind of material mechanism. There's a clear exchange. So that means that in order for me to know something, I go to, say, a book where the book is filled with knowledge, and I have to either go to the book myself and read it, and that way I get the little bits of knowledge into my brain, or a teacher. Maybe they're filled with little bits of knowledge, or they've read a book and they're going to go from the words they read in the book to their own little pile of knowledge in their brain, and they're going to transmit it to me and put it into my bowl. So that is our current model for how we know things. It's bits of information that gets transmitted, that gets shared, which is why the definition refers to, I've been saying it wrong, by the way. The power, I'll say it one more time, the power or faculty of attaining direct knowledge or cognition without evident rational thought and inference. I said interference. Inference. So the rational thought, the inference, the other, in the previous definition where it spoke of proof or evidence, all of those things are really pointing to the same thing. That how can I know any of the knowledge that's in this vessel if I haven't directly used some kind of mechanism that takes that knowledge and puts it into my own brain? Is there some way where I can directly know anything about the contents of this vessel just by direct cognition? That's the mystery of intuition. That's the question. So my answer is yes. My answer is that there is indeed plenty of evidence, and I know if you're for skeptical folks that they will take objection to that very idea that I've suggested, that there's plenty of evidence, but there is plenty of evidence that shows that we do indeed receive information not because we actually have to somehow physically manipulate it, mechanically move it from here to here, but that it's conveyed through a field, that there's a field of information. Rupert Sheldrake, I think, has advanced the best theory of this with his work on morphogenetic fields. And there's plenty of terrific evidence in his work and in his books, and you can take a look at those. But for me, what I've discovered in my own work, and I will share as much as I can with you on these series about how to build up that intuition skill set. What I've learned in developing my own intuition skill set is that if we think of information as existing in a sort of ocean, each of us can tap into that ocean and receive information. In fact, each of us, there's some classic analogies about waves and oceans, and that certainly applies here. The other way I think of it, and if I can, I'll insert a little drawing here. But the other way I think of it is, if you imagine, instead of an ocean sort of below you, maybe an ocean surrounding you, and we all tap into that ocean of information. And I happen to be tuned into, usually, to the ocean of information surrounding Allison. But I am not restricted to the ocean of information surrounding Allison. And as I said, I will show you how to connect with that information through these videos. So I want you to consider then for a moment that information is actually non-local. If it was localized, that means all the information about Allison would be contained in this body, and the only way you could get it from me is if I share it with you, either through my writing or through my communication with you. But we have all had the experience. I remember this very well when I was a student in a classroom. A teacher would walk in, and I was the kind of student, I was a very good, one of those good students. My attention was always on the teacher from the moment they walked in. I was often the teacher's pet. I know people don't like that. Some people don't like the teacher's pet, but that was often me. When the teacher would walk in, I could feel if they were in a good mood or a bad mood. Like it was as if their emotional energy was sort of carried along with them like a fragrance that they were wearing. It was easy to perceive. Not everyone would perceive that because not everyone cares about the teacher. Not everyone might have been tuned in to the teacher. That's like if, just even right now, if I were to ask you to listen to the bird outside. In our course of our conversation, you might not notice the song of the bird outside because that's not where your attention is. But the moment you lean your attention in that direction, you can hear the bird's song. I don't know if you can hear it, but there is some birds singing out there. So that's, that for me is the beginning of understanding how knowing works. And when we allow for this form of knowing that goes beyond just what I can pull out of a book. Now, if I go to a book, I think books are so fabulous. I love books. I love the internet. I love that we have so much information available to us. It makes it very efficient for me to learn about, the birch tree. I don't have to go and sit as Allison. I can get a shortcut to learning a lot of information about the birch tree if I just look up information about the tree. So there does exist collection of knowledge, and we can go and we can pick up that information and add it to our own storehouse of knowledge. But there also exists knowing that has to do with that we can experience through empathy, through relation. We can know not just the individual parts, but the flow of information and relationship between the parts of a system. And the most, the smartest, wisest, most intelligent people that you know and that I know are actually people who have this full capacity, both perhaps the intellectual capacity to know lots of information, but also what you could call the intuitive capacity to know the world, to know the world emotionally, to know the world dynamically, to know the world energetically. Those are legitimate ways of knowing. If there is one outcome of this, any of the work that I do, it is to help you empower yourself that knowledge does not exist outside of you in some separate vessel that you just have to go to, or that somebody else who's smarter than you has to give you. Your knowing exists right inside of you, and that we happen to be living at a time up until now where we haven't been taught how to access this natural perceptive ability that we have. We've been extremely limited. It's as if we've grown up in a world where our whole being is basically covered with a wool blanket, and we have little tiny pinholes to try to perceive the whole world. If we could just take off that heavy wool blanket, we would discover that actually we have a whole range of perception available to us. I'm going to give you one more thing to consider in this conversation, which is that our bodies, the cells in our bodies, are incredibly intelligent. They've organized themselves into the different parts of the body, the different organs. They flow, they receive oxygen, they take the food that you eat and break it down into nutrients that it can use. It releases the waste. There's so much happening without your brain controlling a single part of it. They are intelligent. There's an intelligence that they have, and not, I'm going to add one more thing here, not just the intelligence of the trillions of cells in your body, but even the intelligence of the cells that are also inhabiting your body, the organisms that are in your gut that help your digestion, for example. This sort of symbiotic relationship that they have with you. There's a whole intelligence, a whole community of intelligence, and a whole ecosystem in your being. And that ecosystem has a living intelligence that, we would be, if our brains had to control that, we wouldn't have survived this far in our evolution. So just take a moment to consider the incredible intelligence of your living body that has nothing to do with your brain, and then lean into, see if you can start to just trust that, oh yeah, not only is this intelligence a part of my body, it's running my body, but I can actually connect with it. I might not have a specific feeling or thought. It might not even have might have no language whatsoever. But consider for a moment that there's some part of you that is actually intimately connected with the intelligence of your body. And in future videos, I will show you how to use the intelligence of your body. So that's it. Thank you for showing up to this first video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.